So this is a very witty, thoughtful comedy. It went from unpublished novel
Yes.
to script. Can you tell us about that process?
Well, Karen Rinaldi, who wrote the novel, The End of Men, which is coming out in a year, I think, sent me a few chapters of it and said, you know, I think this might be a good premise for a film. And I'd been looking for something to adapt. And so I read it, and it had the triangle of Maggie, John, Georgette, and it had the fundamental hook in it, the idea, you know, of the switch. And I thought, oh God, this is hilarious. Let's say, you know, the tone wasn't necessarily that funny. It was a little bit more serious, but the way I looked at it was sort of as an absurd, comical idea. And so then I started building it out and adding the characters of Bill and Maya, Bill Hader and Maya Rudolph and Travis Fimmel and so on like that. Talked a lot to Rachel Horowitz, Karen Rinaldi, people to kind of like get a sense of how to make it, how to build it out, because it's kind of molded on screwball comedies and romantic comedies from the 40s in terms of the type of film that it is. And so I watched a lot of those films. I watched a lot of Preston Sturges films, and so.
And when writing this, did you have the actors, specific actors in mind, like Greta, or
no?
How did
not
you find
when
them?
I wrote the first draft. I really just wrote a first draft. But then, pretty much once I had a solid draft, I went to Julianne and I went to Greta. And well, I met Greta, and then immediately I realized Greta was perfect for the part. And once that happened, then I went into another draft and really kind of tailored the parts to those actors. And then we had Ethan Hawke, and I did the same thing with him.
And speaking of Ethan Hawke, you were the first female director I heard that he's worked with. How do you feel about that, and how do you think women have progressed in the
Well, apparently
industry?
not much. I mean, yeah, statistically it's alarming because he's worked so much. But there you go.
Yeah. And what was your favorite scene? Do you have a favorite scene from the movie that you either filmed or that just watching it you just love?
Well, I have a few favorite scenes. I really do. I love the scene where Greta tells the story of her mother. I think that's really moving. And I think that, you know, I love watching the scene where Julianne gives the ashes back and she says that she's returned his book. That's great. I mean, there's a lot of scenes that I love. I love watching the montage with the little girl. Yeah, so.
And for you going into comedy, how was that? How is that a challenge for you moving into comedy, or were the changes that you had to make as a director and a writer?
Honestly, it felt pretty natural. There have always been comedic passages in my films, but I just flipped the emphasis so that, you know, I just made them bigger islands. You know, the comical islands were bigger than the dramatic islands.
And what do you want the audience to take away from this film?
I don't know. I think it's a pretty merciful film, like hopeful about people, and you know, I think that it's important to be able to laugh at ourselves and see you know, watching this film should give you an experience of a smart film, which is a lot of fun to watch. You know, and that's what I'm hoping to give you.
And keep making more. It was absolutely a pleasure talking to you, and thanks for taking the time to talk to FabTV.